In this case, one set of SL-Infinity fans are the new wireless Infinity fans, and I wanted to know if you guys are able to tell which one is the new wireless ones or which one are your standard SL-Infinity fans. And I'm going to give you guys a nice close-up here. I'm going to move to the right here, get a nice little side profile view. And if you guys have guessed it, these set of fans are the new wireless SL-Infinity fans by Lian Li. And the easiest way to tell is that now the new wireless fans have a total of 3 different controllable RGB zones, which I think adds even more customization possibilities. So Lian Li has sent me a total of 13 wireless SL-Infinity fans with a mixture between reverse blades and your standard blade fan. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys exactly how to install all these SL-Infinity fans on my Y70 Touch case and show you guys exactly how to control all the awesome RGB effects using Lian Li's L-Connect software. So when it comes to the options that you have available at the time of this video is, of course, you'll have the option between either white or black, and then you have the option between reverse blade and standard blade, and you can easily tell from the front because the reverse blades are the only ones that will have that reverse blade indicator. And finally, you have the option between a 3-pack or a single pack, which I'll cover exactly what you get in each one of these. So starting off with the 3-pack reverse blade, of course you're gonna get 3 wireless SL-Infinity fans, 120 millimeters. These are the options that we get at launch. At the moment, there is no 140 millimeter, but hopefully Lian Li adds a 140 millimeter option. So outside of the 3 fans, the 3-pack is going to include the Air Wireless controller, which you could also purchase separately as well in case you're going for all single fans. But as long as you get one 3-pack, it'll include that controller, and you only need one of these to control up to 10 separate sets of wireless devices across SL-Infinity fans, streamer cables, or any other Lian Li wireless ecosystems. Now in the 3-pack, you're gonna have one L wireless receiver. In the 3-pack, you're gonna get a SATA power connector that splits off into 3 separate 2-pin connectors. You're gonna have 3 sets of case fan screws. You're also gonna get 3 sets of infinity mirror protectors. The final thing you can get in the 3-pack is this L wireless power bank, only for the first 6,000 reverse blade 3-packs that connects to the controller. And just to give you a quick demonstration, you can program this power bank and literally connect it to your Infinity fans. And as you can see here, it will supply both power and all the RGB effects, which I think is really awesome. And while this is reserved for the first 6,000, Lian Li, if you're seeing this, you guys should really have this separately because I think this is really cool accessory. For those that are interested in something like this, you can literally control this in the L-Connect software, choose your own color combination, fan speeds, and everything, which is crazy. And finally, for those that pick up the single packs, whether it's a standard blade or reverse blade, you're gonna get one L wireless receiver, a set of case fan screws, and a set of infinity mirror screen protectors. So when it comes to how many fans you actually need between the reverse blade and standard blade, in this type of case where it's a dual chambered case, a lot of popular cases nowadays have a very similar configuration where you can have fans on the top, rear, bottom, and the side. Generally, your standard blades are going to act as exhaust. You're definitely going to put those on the top and the rear as well. And in most cases, if your case supports 3 fans on top, 1 on the rear, then you would need a total of 4 standard blades. Again, it's going to completely depend on your specific PC case configurations. And when it comes to the reverse blades, these will act as intake fans, meaning that you're intaking cold air. And generally in these type of cases, your bottom fans and your side fans are going to be reverse blade or set to intake, so it's pulling in air while still maintaining that nice mirrored finish. So in this type of scenario, if your case supports 3 on the side, 3 on the bottom, then in general you would need 6 reverse blades. Now because in my specific scenario, I'm also doing a push-pull configuration with a side AIO mount, the fans that go behind the radiator, it doesn't really matter which one you get, whether it's the standard or the reverse blade. Since you're not going to see the mirror finish anyways, just so as long as you set the fans on the back to also follow the same type of airflow. So both of these have to be intaking air, of course, since they are on the side. If you mount your radiator on the top of your case, then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to have standard blades. Those are going to be set to exhaust. If you decide to do a push-pull, just make sure the extra set of fans on top of the radiator is also set to exhaust air. So to start off the tutorial, we're going to start installing the bottom case fans. So when it comes to bottom fans for your case, you definitely want to make sure you stick with the reverse blade so you can see the infinity mirror. Now, even though the Y70 Touch has a floor on the top, you don't really get to see much of the infinity fans. However, you still could see them just slightly. So in general, for any type of case, just do reverse blades for the bottom. And I'm going to pass this cable right on the bottom. Alright, so the fans are attached. I'm going to re-add the filter here. Alright, filter's attached, and just remember we have this cable over here which we are going to connect. Alright, so with our bottom fan here, we have a 4-pin PWM connector. You can tell because each of these pins have that little silver finish, whereas the other end only has 2. So make sure you connect your 4-pin directly to any one of your motherboard's 4-pin PWM fan headers. So on the Aorus Pro Ice, for example, I have 3 right in the bottom. So I'm going to connect this right on the bottom left. All right, and that's going to be our bottom fan. All right, so that header should be more than enough to supply power to the 3 fans and the RGB effects. When it comes to the rear fan, it's almost always going to be the standard blade fan. So that way it can exhaust hot air out and you can obviously see the mirrored finish. Now, since these only come in 120 millimeter, the fan does appear smaller versus the 140 millimeter that this case does support. So I'm hoping they do release a 140 millimeter version very soon. But for now, we're going to stick to the 120 millimeter. And of course, we have to figure out which one of these sides you want to use, whether it's the traditional design or the rectangle design. I think for this one, I'm going to do the old style. And of course, you want to make sure you attach your connector here. And of course, depending on your case, you may be able to route it very conveniently. I'm going to route it on the top over here. Going to depend on your case. And almost forgot, you are going to need to, of course, remove these rubber pieces from the back. Now, where do I want to place this fan? I think I'm going to place it, I think for now I'm just going to attach the fans here. I could always move the position later. All right, so rear fan is now attached. Remember, we have that cable going to the back, and I'm going to connect that PWM connector right on top here, system fan 4. And so I'm going to rotate the case here. I'm going to grab that connector. All right, and I'm going to pass this under here. Then we can rotate the case again. We got that PWM connector right over here, and I'm going to connect that again to system fan 4. Again, depending on your motherboard and how many connectors you have. And my motherboard has 3 4-pin headers here. One I'm going to use for the AIO, the other for the top fans, and the third one which I'm going to use for the rear fan. If for whatever reason you don't have enough on the top right, you can just connect this cable anywhere else. Your motherboard should have enough fan headers. For example, there's additional fan headers on the side over here. And of course, we have 2 more down there. So depending on your motherboard's layout, it may be a little bit different. But this is already there and I already have the link for it. So I'm going to connect that right over there. All right, so now that's connected to system fan. All right, so here's how to install your SL-Infinity fans on your AIO. And the AIO that I'm using in this example is going to be the NZXT Kraken Elite. The next decision that you have to make is whether or not you're going to be using standard blade fans or reverse blade fans. And so if you're going to top mount your AIO, then you want to use standard blades because these will exhaust air out. So whenever you have this on the top of your case, then you want to make sure that airflow is going up. If you're like me and you're going to side mount your AIO, then you want to get yourself reverse blade. This way you can still see that nice mirror finish. Now I'm going to take it a step further since I'm going to be doing a push-pull. And in this case, since I'm going to be doing a side mount, then I want to make sure that the reverse blades are in front and standard blade on the back. When it comes to the back fans, I do have to install that separately. We're just going to focus on installing these set of fans first. So the first things first, we want to make sure we, of course, interlock them so that we can start the daisy chain. Next thing here that we have to do is remove each of these little rubber pieces so that we can pass the screw. Now you are going to see these rubber pieces also on the back as well, but I had already removed them already, so they're all removed. So make sure you remove all the rubber pieces from the front and the back, but make sure you keep the front pieces because we're going to use that to cover them up again. All right, so once you remove the covered pieces from both the front and the back, we're now ready to position the fans on top of our radiator. Now, another thing that you want to consider is which side you want to use. Remember that one side is going to have these type of mirrors and the other side is going to have the rectangle design. And then another thing here is that these tabs, depending on your AIO, to make space, you can actually remove this by twisting it, and this whole piece comes right off. And this is convenience for radiators that have a really bulky object preventing you from really going in. If you can't push it all the way in, then just remove these tabs completely out of the way. On the other side, there are no tabs. Of course, if I do it this way, I'm perfectly fine as well. But now the other side of the mirror are now shown. So again, it really depends on what you want to do in that point. So I'm going to position them this way. And next thing, you want to grab your radiator screws. Depending on your AIO, they may have washers that are completely separate. So that way when you combine it, you screw it in. Very simple. Now, because you are going to eventually cover this up, one thing to know is if you're going to be using the washer, when you screw it all the way in, the washer increases the height of the screw. So when you try to put a rubber piece, it becomes much harder to actually put this in. Just a little FYI. All right, after you screw in all 12 radiator screws, go ahead and re-add those rubber pieces so that way we can cover these screws. It's something so subtle, but it just adds a nice aesthetic touch. All right, next thing we're installing is gonna be our AIO with the reverse blades already installed like I just showed you. Of course, in the side mount configuration. Now on the Y70 is a little bit difficult for me to install because we don't have a lot of space. But for those that want to know, the easiest way to do it would be to not install the top fans yet. I'm going to be doing the tubes on the bottom method, and just position your pump, lay it down on the floor of the case, and slowly bring the AIO towards you. Now the Kraken is a little bit more trickier because we have a breakout cable on top of that. Alright, and so once you have everything laid down, I'm going to tuck the breaker cable on the bottom. Alright, so next thing here, I'm just going to pass the receiver. Just going to pass the cable on top of here so I can leave the connector on top. Just going to leave that hanging right over there. And then finally, since I'm doing a push-pull, these are standard blade, and I'm going to have them positioned right over here. This one though, I'm going to pre-connect now, and I'm going to pass this along. Now ready to position the AIO. I'm going to be very careful here. Push this more towards the right. I'll lift this up. Alright. Perfect. Next thing here, I'm going to grab the connector, and we're going to connect that right on top. Alright, got that connected. Push-pull is a little bit more trickier. Now we're almost ready to screw everything in. So I'm going to rotate the case. And since we're doing a push-pull to screw in the SL-Infinities on the back, we are going to need some longer radiator screws. Lift this up. I'm going to pass it through. Alright, got the top right screw, and I'm going to tackle the bottom left to make sure we have everything lined up perfectly. Alright, so I got bottom right and bottom left, and now all I have to do is screw in the rest of the screws. Alright, so screws are in. However, you'll notice right over here that I, by mistake, left this one tab on. So my recommendation is to make sure that you have them off on both sides. This is most likely just on one side. However, since I have the majority already screwed in, 11 screws, I was already 6 screws in. I was like, gonna leave it that way since this is way more than enough to ensure that this is nice and secured. Since we have 2 receivers now, depending on the length, again, you can decide on where exactly on your motherboard you want to attach it. But on my motherboard, I still have additional pins on the side, which is pretty convenient. And so I'm going to route these 2 cables right behind the strimmer cables and pass them through here. All right, so those 2 cables showed up right over here. And on my Aorus Pro Ice, I have 2 additional PWM connectors on the side. And once again, make sure you have the 4-pin side. All right, so these 2 fans are now connected. All right, for the last set of fans here, this is going to be your top exhaust fans. You want to make sure they're, of course, standard blade. And I'm going to attach the connector to the left side. All right, so that is nice and locked in. Now keep in mind, for this type of controller here, I want to make sure that this cable is now facing the other side. So in order for us to do that, you can just basically remove this top piece. Once that pops out, you can go ahead and switch the orientation of the connector. And then you'll be able to snap this right back in. Now we change the orientation of the cable because we're going for the boxy design. And now the cable is facing the right direction. And so we're going to make sure we route the connector in the same channel that we did for the rear fan. All right, and I'm going to position these fans on the lower level of this case so we can see the mirrored finish. All right, and there we have the top fans already installed. All right, let's go ahead and rotate the case here real quick. All right, now we have the connector right over here. And so because of the length of this cable, my best option here is to connect it to this final PWM connector on the top of the motherboard, put it in this connector here. All right, and here is our final connector. And I have a CPU optional 4-pin header, and I'm going to put that right there. And so once again, I have CPU optional for the top fans. CPU fan is going to be for my AIO pump. And then finally, system fan 4 was our rear fan. And then these two other fans are connected right over here. And finally, the bottom fan is connected to that PWM. So I still have room for 2 more PWM connector. However, since we're just using 5 sets, we have more than enough fan headers to support. All right, so the last thing to connect is going to be our L wireless controller. You want to decide on exactly how you want to connect this. Since as I said earlier, you can connect this very easily with a USB, which you can easily connect to the back of the motherboard, making that installation process super easy and simple. However, me personally, I don't like this USB sticking out. I would rather install it inside the case so that way it is out of sight. So to do that, you're going to need the connector that comes with the L wireless controller. You want to connect this on the bottom. Once you have that connected, this splits off into an internal USB header that we definitely need to connect. And then we also have a 4-pin PWM connector, which we can connect to the motherboard as well. So that way the L wireless controller can also work using the motherboard software as well. And so on your motherboard, depending on how many internal USBs you have, most motherboards only have a total of 2. In this case, if you don't have any more additional internal USB headers on your motherboard, then using the USB input might be a great choice, or another option is to use an internal USB hub, which I'll show you right now. So right in the back here, I have the Heights internal USB hub. And what this does is it basically gives 4 additional internal USBs, since most motherboards only have 2. So I could connect this either to the motherboard or to the USB hub. Make sure you match the missing pin, of course. And that gets connected. So I'm going to tuck this right back in. And then this L wireless controller, I can literally put this anywhere. And so if I want to, I can probably just leave it right on top of the PSU if I wanted to. And then this PWM connector, I'm going to pass it on the bottom so we can connect that. All right, and that PWM connector is right on the bottom, and I'm going to connect that directly to an open 4-pin PWM connector, which I'll connect right over here. So I connected that right over here. And one last final thing here, your SATA 3-way splitter. Again, this is going to depend completely on whether or not your motherboard is supplying enough power to each set of these fans. These are usually recommended if you're daisy chaining more than 2 Infinity fans. In this case, we have 4 sets of fans that have 3 fans together, and only the rear fan is the one that's by itself. So if for whatever reason you're having issues where the fans are not behaving correctly, let's say one of the fans are not spinning, maybe the RGB is not turning on, then it could mean that your motherboard is not supplying enough power. In the 3-pack, you get the SATA adapter here, and the way that works is you would have to plug in a SATA power cable from a PSU. If you don't already have SATA power, then inside your PSU box, you should have a whole ton of these additional cables, and they look just like this. They're normally 6 pins that you connect to your PSU, and most of them give you 4 SATA power connectors. I already have one already here in the bottom that's powering the touchscreen display of the Y70, the Kraken AIO, and even the USB hub. So I actually have one remaining here so I can easily and quickly demonstrate to you exactly how to use it. So once you connect the SATA power, only goes one way. You're going to find the tail end of your SL-Infinity fans. In this case, this is the tail end, and you know because it only has two little silver pins. And all we have to do is just connect them. So you can connect up to 3 different sets with one of those SATA powers. So just for now, I'm going to include the power for the fans attached to the AIO, and I'm not going to bother with the rest of the cables since my motherboard has enough power to power on all those type of fans. But for now, we'll leave just these 2 set of fans connected via SATA power, and you can look at the specs of your motherboard, and it should tell you how much power output those headers provide. In this case, the Aorus Pro Ice, each one of these 4-pin headers can provide up to 24 watts of power. And taking a look at the specs of the Lian Li SL-Infinity fans, you'll see right over here the input power here is 0.43 amps or 5.16 watts. Basically, taking 3 of these is just under 16 watts, and each header should be more than enough to power 3. And so now the last thing here is to just connect all my final components, and I'll power everything on so I can show you guys exactly how to set everything up. All right, so I've connected all of the components here. I have the wireless streamers all connected, and this is how it looks like just powering it on without setting anything up here. So let's go ahead and hit the power switch and see what happens. All right, and right from the start here, you will notice that the fans had like a, the RGBs turned on first and then it starts spinning. But all fans are spinning, even the ones on the bottom. Now the only one that's showing a blue color right now are those because I had that connected prior, but all the other fans default to a white color. So I do like the fact that they have that standard white color instead of that rainbow color. Let's take a closer look on the side here. As you can see, all the other fans defaulted to white colors, and then the other one is already saved. But that's how you know that everything is working beautifully. So the software that you're going to use to control these fans or other wireless devices, such as the 3 wireless streamers that you currently see, you want to go and download L-Connect 3 from Lian Li software. You can download basically the latest one. And once you have everything set up, the program basically looks like this, which gives you system info and full control over everything you can do with the fans and the streamers. So the first thing that I want to cover here is going to be L Wireless Sync setup. So when you click on this here, it's going to list all of the wireless devices that your L Wireless controller is detecting. Now when we look at the status, you can see everything is turned on blue, meaning that they're all binded to the L Wireless controller. But whenever you first set it up, if I were to, let's say, unclick this, once I unclick that, you'll basically see this a broken chain, literally telling you to click on the icon so you can bind it. So as long as you click on each one of the available devices, it will automatically bind. And you'll notice the top fans is now changed colors, so they're now showing a rainbow color. And as you're binding each one of these devices, it will automatically default to a rainbow color. Now on the next side here, we have device name, and these are the default names that are given with each device that you can actually rename by double clicking. You can rename each one of these devices. And the best way to figure out which one's which is right on the right side, we have identify. So this streamer wireless _3, if I click on identify, you'll notice that the CPU side is blinking yellow, letting me know that that is the CPU one. So for here, I can go ahead and type in CPU streamer, for example, hit enter, and now that's renamed to CPU streamer. And I can do the same thing with everything else. You'll see that one's for the GPU. And then for the actual fans, they'll say SL-INF. And all you have to do is, like as I showed earlier, click on identify on each one, and you can literally rename it so that way you know which one's which. So this is the rear. Now everything is named, and you can hit OK. Now for the first time, it will show you exactly how to customize each one of these effects. I'm gonna hit no need to remind again because that will show up every single time. Now going back to our wireless sync setup, again, we have all of our devices. Now if you ever want to reorder these, you can go to settings, device, click on your Air Wireless Sync, and under the controller here, you'll see all the devices. And again, this can support up to 10 separate devices, and then you can reorder each one of these. So for example, if I want my top fans to be on top, and then the push being the back of the radiator, pull, then rear, then bottom, and then all the streamers I want on the bottom, so I can go ahead and click apply. And that will basically save the order. So when we go back to our wireless sync, you'll see that everything is now reordered based off of what I specifically chose. So the first thing I'm going to cover is how to control the RGB, and that's going to be under L Wireless Utility. And under L Wireless Utility is where you can see on the left side all of the fans that you just renamed. So we have top, push, pull, rear, and bottom. And right here in the bottom left, we have lighting effects. And this drop down over here has 4 separate options. The first one here controls all of the zones. So if I quickly choose static color, and let's say I choose a blue color, I would fill each one of these blue, or I can click on this chain to make sure everything is blue. And then I click on apply. And remember, this is the top fan. So if I click on apply, the top changes to blue. And then I can go down to my rear fan, for example. I can click on a completely different effect. So let's say runway. And this time I want to do a red color and a blue color. Hit apply. And now that rear fan has its own individual effect. If I want to quickly throw the same effect on all the fans, all I have to do is click on apply to all SL-Infinity fans. So when I click on that, all the fans now share the same RGB effects, and I can do that anywhere. So if I go back to the first one, I can go ahead and click on static color, and if I want all of them to be maybe like a pinkish color, apply to all, and now everything is all synced in with just one single color. For all the other options here, these are the different zones that are controllable. Starting with the first option here, this one, to make things easier, I'm going to make this completely red so you know exactly which one's which. Let me hit apply real quick. Apply to all. So as you can see, this first option controls the RGB on the side of the fan and the outer RGB layer of the mirrored side as well. And then the second option here, which is a little dot, these are the RGB colors on the inside of the actual fan. So for example, I'm going to quickly turn on to yellow so you know exactly what I mean. So the circle is just basically the RGB color inside. I'm going to make this stand out a little bit here. Let's make it a white color. Finally, the last option here with just 2 lines. This is the LED zone inside the actual infinity mirror. So to make this really stand out, I'm just going to quickly do a static color. Click on blue real quick. Hit apply to all. And now you can see that inside of the infinity mirror is a completely different color. So there's a lot of ways to customize this, and over here we have of course brightness levels here. So if I want to do a 50%, or if I want to quickly put 0%, it'll shut off that zone. And one of the reasons why I love the SL-Infinities is that for those that want that minimalistic look, I can easily click on the dot, turn off the brightness, or change the color to black. So if I go 0% brightness and apply to all, you'll see that the only thing that's on are the other 2 zones. Maybe I just want the side RGBs to be on. Now I personally love that feature because for those that love RGB, turn on all the RGB, or for those that want a minimalistic look, maybe just keep the RGBs on each of the sides and you have a nice look, which is similar to the TL fans where you only have RGB on the sides of the fans and no RGB inside the fans, which is nice. I personally love the fact that I still have control of the inside of the fans. I can quickly turn on the inside of the fan, and depending on what I want, I can basically customize. So the customization on this is definitely endless, which I really appreciate. Now, if you have streamers, of course, you will also have streamer wireless here as well. And currently, Lian Li offers streamers for the CPU, GPU, and the motherboard as well. So I'm going to quickly change the effects on this real quick. Now these are independent to the fans themselves, so you would have to click on a specific effect. But one of the most popular ones a lot of people love is the drizzling effect. And I personally like to just leave it white with some maybe blue colors inside. Sync to all. Now to finish that effect, it's going the opposite side. You can pretty much hit direction on the left side, and that will bring that effect inside. So it kind of looks like power is going in, and then you can adjust the speed. I personally like to leave it at 25%. I think that makes it look a little bit better. But again, there's a lot of custom effects. Now the next thing here is the fan profile. So on the same chart under L Wireless Utility, you'll see that if I click on fan profile, I can easily change the profile of each of the fans. However, to dive deeper into each curves, you just click on this option over here, and now you have full access to all these different type of curves depending on each set of fans. So you also have the option of changing the source of the temperature, whether it's CPU or GPU. Then you can also switch these fans to have full motherboard control. So if I click on this, for example, now all of these have the motherboard RPM sync. And so because I have these connected to my motherboard, Right now they're set to 100%, for example. You'll notice that all of these RPMs are kicking up very fast or at a higher curve, for example. And then I can click on off and it will automatically switch back to the wireless controller. That right there is very seamless. So that's pretty much everything that you need to know on how to set up your wireless fans, control the RGB and the fan profiles as well. So after switching all of my older Infinity fans to the new wireless SL-Infinities, I really like the subtle changes and the additional RGB zone for even more possibilities to make your setup a little bit more unique. A 3-pack with a wireless controller will set you back $105, while a single pack will run you about $32, which is pretty close to the price of the older Infinity fans. These fans are still considered expensive, but the quality of the RGB and awesome L-Connect software control makes these fans worth it in my opinion over cheaper RGB fans. The whole wireless ecosystem is really cool, and I love how both the wireless Strimmers and wireless fans all share the same controller. But I will say that connecting these SL-Infinity fans can be a little more challenging versus the traditional way where you connected each set of fans to an SL-Infinity hub. The upside though is that the L wireless controller is more universal and widely available, giving you more flexibility. These new wireless SL-Infinities are now my new favorite fans, and I can't wait to create new builds with these fans, and I hope they make a 140mm version soon. I want to thank you guys for watching this tutorial, and I hope it helps with your own PC build. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Firewolf out.